Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my performance review of Brandin Podziemski's first signature shoe with a Rigorer, and of course this is the Rigorer BP1. And if you guys didn't know, Rigorer is a Chinese company and Austin Reeves is signed to that company as well. And if you guys didn't know, the AR1 and the AR2 are amazing performers. So I was very curious to get these in and try them out, right? And as far as the price goes, the price is really freaking good. It retails for only $90. And also the AR2, which is one of the best hoop shoes of this year in my personal opinion, is only $100 bucks. You know what I mean? So if you guys do want to cop it, try to leave an affiliate link in the description box. But yeah, the BP1, and this is the Kaleidoscope colorway. You know, I guess the only kaleidoscope is right here. Yeah, I don't know why it's all pink, but anyways, let's get it started right off with the Tracciones, right? In this colorway, we have a fully translucent rubber. Look at that. You know, and also here in the fourth, we got 3 circles, and they're saying it is a swirl pattern. And because of that, it's supposed to improve grip, I guess. You know what I mean? And then it does, yeah, as far as the grooves go, it gets extremely thick once you get here into the heel. Look at that. It gets thicker here in the midfoot, and then it gets super thick here in the heel. So yeah, how is the traction? So as far as like the overall bite goes, it's okay. I would say it's pretty good. If you're playing on a clean court, it's a pretty good bite, you know, but of course there are way better tractions out there in my personal opinion, right? Like the JB3 has an amazing bite, the Joker 1 GT, you know, the 8085 Ultra, you know, All City 13, like all the shoes that I really like to play in, amazing traction. And of course I was rotating with those shoes when I was testing this, right? Just to see how the traction was and, you know, comparing it with like the top performing hoop shoes. So yeah, as far as the bite goes, I would say it's around like an 8, 7.5 to 8, you know what I mean? Like it does slide a little bit. And it just never got to the point where it's just like a really good instantaneous, like really hard stop, you know? So that kind of sucks, you know what I mean? But again, it wasn't terrible, so I could definitely deal with it. And I didn't really mind it too much. I just wish it was a little bit harder of a stop. So there is the clean court. And also, as far as the squeak goes, this shoe has no squeak. Even when I broke it in, it doesn't really squeak that much. Of course, squeak has nothing to do with performance, but if you like to have a nice squeak like me, then this shoe, no squeak really at all, which is kind of weird. And also, of course, moving on to the dust performance. That's where the shoe shines, you know what I mean? So the dust performance is really freaking good. It's super duper consistent. So it has that 7.5 to 8 out of 10 bite on like a whatever dusty surface you're playing on, of course, right? So it's just a really consistent and reliable traction on a dusty court, right? So light dust, pretty much the same exact performance, which is very nice, right? Once I got to like a moderately dusty to a super heavily dusty court, then it started to slide a little bit more, but again, like it just wasn't a super terrible stop, which surprised me, you know what I mean? Just has a very consistent, not amazing bite. You know what I mean? So if you are playing on a dusty court, then of course this will be a very good option, of course, if you don't mind having like not an amazing bite. Also, you don't really need a wipe that much either, and even when I was playing on a super dusty court, just need a slight wipe and I was good to go. And I just didn't have terrible stops, but also again I didn't have amazing stops. So there is the dust performance there. And now moving on to the durability. Okay, that's something that I'm kind of worried about, you know what I mean? Like in my first impressions, I thought it was gonna be good because the rubber is actually kind of hard and the grooves are thick. But I don't know if you guys can see, but the rubber is fraying off a lot. You know, that's only from indoor use. You know, so yeah, durability definitely doesn't seem like the best to me. So that kind of sucks. But yeah, overall traction performance is actually pretty nice and consistent. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition. Overall, it does feel very smooth, right? So here in the heel, we have a nice curved shape as well as a very exposed midsole pretty much here in the heel. So it does feel pretty nice right here in the heel when you're doing heel dominant strides. And also here in the forefoot, again, very nice curved shape. So that feels very nice and smooth. And also as far as how this shoe feels, it does feel pretty springy here in the forefoot, right? It does, you can't really bend it too easily, you know what I mean? But it is able to flex, right? And once you are flexing the shoe, it has a pretty nice springy feel. And of course you can see that plate, you know what I mean? It kind of starts right over here and goes all the way here into the forefoot. So of course, first of all, torso support is pretty dang good and it does have a nice springy feel. So yeah, overall, very smooth heel to toe transition starting from the heel, and then once you get into the forefoot, doing heel dominant strides, it does give you a nice kind of like springy feel and also kind of like stiffer feel compared to, I don't know, like the Luka 4. Luka 4, again, look, very flexible, very nimble feeling. BP1, not super stiff though, comparing it to like, you know, the Jordan 12 or something like that, but it does have a stiffer feel and a springier feel with better torsional support, of course. There is a heel to toe transition there. Moving on to the cushioning setup, they don't really specify what type of cushion they're using, you know what I mean? They only say it's a foam, a bouncy foam with 70% rebound rate. So I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but yeah, as far as the overall cushioning setup goes, it's okay. You know what I mean? For 90 bucks, I would say it's pretty nice, especially with my experience with like $90 shoes from Nike and Adidas, which usually have zero cushion. This is actually pretty dang nice, right? But comparing it to like, even like the AR2, you know, but any other shoe that has really nice cushion, like the Joker 1 GT or the 808 Ultra, the Zion 4, you know, this shoe does not have amazing cushion, right? So first of all, the insole is not super nice, you know what I mean? It's really crappy. There's no foaminess, there's no compression, it's just there. It doesn't really do anything, you know, it literally is just like a piece of paper, you know? So that kind of sucks, and then underneath that we have quite a stiff struggle board, you know what I mean? It's not super stiff though, it's not super glued down, but it does feel a little bit stiffer than like a soft mesh struggle board, again, found in like the AR2. But you know, once you get going though, you know, once I got going, it does get a little bit softer, you know what I mean? So I'm not super heavy, right? So when I'm just, you know, for the step and comfort, when I'm just standing around, it's not super plush and not super soft, right? But once I got going, I could feel, especially in the heel, I can feel the cushion, you know, I can feel my foot digging into the foam a little bit, and it did have a nice kind of plush and soft feel, right? Again, not as soft as like the AR2, or even like the Joker 1 GT or the 808 Ultra or the Zion 4. You know what I mean? Those have crazy underfoot cushions, but this one still, it's just very subtle, but still there. Of course, if you are heavier, you'll definitely feel a lot more than me, of course. And then once you get into the forefoot, it does get up pretty dead, or at least for me. But you know, as far as the core feel goes, the core feel isn't good. You know, the core feel is pretty high up off the ground, I would say, especially here in the heel. The forefoot, it gets a little bit lower to the ground, and there is a pretty high offset actually. It's some shoes are like, you know, this is flat. Some shoes are like this, but the BP1 is actually quite high. I definitely did notice that as well. Overall impact protection, I would say, is pretty nice because of the thicker foam and the soft foam. And when I was doing the heel dominant strides as well, it did feel like soft, but it did have a little bit of bounce as well. Not super bouncy though, just a little bit of rebound back. I don't know why they're saying 70% rebound rate, because it's not super bouncy, but it does have a little subtle bounce to it. So overall, again, nothing amazing, but for 90 bucks, it's nice. It's kind of nice, you know? So there's the cushioning setup there. Moving on to the upper. So the upper quality for $90 is actually pretty nice, right? So they're using this kind of like cloth, like textile material with this pretty cool pattern on it. And here in the toe box, now that it's broken, it's actually pretty soft. Look at that. Pretty dang soft in the middle of the toe box, but then around it we have this synthetic material, of course, and it does stiffen up the material a little bit, giving you better support, of course, and durability, especially if you do toe drags. So it feels really nice here in the toe box, right? It does, you know, it feels nice when you first get it. You don't really need to break it in, but once you do break it in, it gets even softer, you know what I mean, which is nice. And yeah, here in the toe box, again, it feels great, right? Also, we do have some more synthetic materials, and here on the lateral side, it is embroidered. You can see the stitching here, and we can see this plastic piece with this really thin plastic. It's not even like a super stiff, supportive feeling plastic, which I think is a good thing. You know, if it was a super stiff plastic, you know, it would be probably a little bit uncomfortable, you know. But anyways, of course, that cages the foam a little bit here in the forefoot and gives you a little bit more lateral containment, a little bit more lockdown, I guess. You know, the laces do go through it, right? But yeah, as far as here in the midfoot as well, it does get a little bit stiffer here because there is an underlaying material, right? So we have this synthetic material that does kind of like wrap around like fingers and kind of goes like this. You know what I mean, with the eyelets, as you guys can see. So that does stiffen up the material, give you better support, and also, I guess, a little bit more lockdown, but it's more for, you know, support, which I think is a good idea. That's great, right? Also, for the tongue, we do have very minimal padding. You know, it's a very, first of all, the lining is pretty cheap, but yeah, there's zero padding. It's also a half booty construction tongue, giving you a better overall one-to-one fit. And then here in the ankle area, we have like an average amount of padding. Like on the sides, not super well padded. It does get a little bit thicker here in the where your Achilles is, but surprisingly, it's not super well padded, you know what I mean? And of course, on the outside of the heel, we have this kind of like synthetic material. So yeah, for 90 bucks, this textile is actually not that bad, but the fuse and also like the lining material and also with the laces, it does feel a little bit cheap, but again, it feels nice on foot. Overall, it feels supportive, and once you break it in, it gets really soft and comfortable. Not super well padded, so it's not a super cozy feeling upper, but it feels thin and it feels supportive, right? So there is a material there. Moving on to the fit, so I went true to size, and this shoe fits me pretty dang well. And yeah, it did break in, right? So at first, it was actually a pretty snug fit here in the toe box for me, but I guess this material, it kind of like stretches out and gets a little bit roomier once you break it in, right? As you guys can look at this, it does kind of like, you know, scrunch up a good amount now. So it's not super snug, or it's not as snug as when I first got it, but it's not terribly roomy, which I do like. It's still kind of like a slightly snug fit though, you know what I mean? Lengthwise, I'm good going true to size, you know? There's a little bit of length, but I feel like most people should be fine going true to size. And width-wise, it is around normal width, and then once you get into the tip of the toe, it gets a little bit narrower, but it's very, very similar to like most other hoop shoes. You know, it gets slightly narrow, you know what I mean? So yeah, most people, I feel like you should be fine going true to size. So there is the fit there. Moving on to the support and lockdown. So that's what the shoe does pretty dang well. So lateral containment, of course, with all of this going on and also the upper being pretty sturdy and supportive, my foot was not coming out of the footbed here in the forefoot at all, right? Especially with this plastic piece, and also with the heel, right? You can see the foam, which this part of the shoe, because of this, it does feel bulky, you know what I mean? But it does come up like crazy, and there seems to be an internal TPU heel counter. So yeah, lateral containment, my foot wasn't coming out of the footbed at all, and even if you're a bigger guy, you should be fine. Your foot is not going to come out of the footbed, right? Also, lateral stability, I had zero issues. You know, it is a very wide base here in the forefoot, and also pretty much zero issues with lockdown. You know, when I was playing in the shoe, surprisingly with the roomier fit, now that it's broken in, my foot wasn't moving inside of the shoe this way at all either, and I had zero heel slippage. So overall, support and lockdown, very, very nice in this shoe, especially for how minimal the upper feels, you know what I mean? So there's that. Moving on to the weight of the shoe, it's 12.2 ounces, slightly lighter than average. Let's check the other shoe. 12.1 ounces, right? So the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces. So this shoe is slightly lighter than average, and it doesn't feel super heavy, but it does feel a little bit bulky. Yeah, first of all, especially because the cushion is a little bit higher up off the ground. So the core feel isn't the best, and so that didn't help. And also, like I said, with all this cushion here in the heel, it didn't feel like, it felt a little bit bulky, you know what I mean? But is it responsive? Yes, it is a pretty responsive shoe. Again, I wish the traction just had a better bite, but because it was so consistent, I didn't really mind it too much on like the dusty courts. But yeah, like I said, you know, when I was playing it, I did feel pretty quick, just felt a little bit bulky, and I just wish the traction just was a little bit better, right? So there is the weight there. Moving on to the ventilation. Ventilation is okay, right? So through this textile, there's a little bit of airflow, just a tiny bit, and because the material is pretty dang thin, it's not keeping in heat, and also we do have this mesh material as well. So the ventilation is pretty good. It's not the best, but it's also not terrible. And now moving on to the durability, I feel like this shoe would be pretty tanky. I feel like it would last you a good amount of time. It doesn't feel like, you know, terribly put together or anything like that. Nothing's coming off, none of the glue, like the glue work seems solid. You know, it's just the only thing is the rubber fraying off. So just be careful with that, of course. And as far as, yeah, the aesthetics, no. I mean, look at this. Just not a great looking shoe in my personal opinion. And even the other colorways, you know what I mean? So kind of sucks because, you know, like the AR2 looks pretty dang good, and the AR1 looked pretty dang good to me as well. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, yeah, for 90 bucks, this is actually a pretty solid shoe, surprisingly, because I really didn't like this at first, right? But once I started playing, it was actually a pretty solid shoe. Again, I give it a solid like 7 out of 10. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not my favorite. You know, the traction could be better. The cushion also, in my personal opinion, could be better. A little bit softer, you know, a little bit lower to the ground, and better underfoot cushion, but still not bad, you know, especially for the price. The upper quality is not bad. It just feels, you know, a little bit bulky here in the heel, but overall pretty responsive, you know what I mean? So for me and what I want in a hoop shoe, of course, it's pretty nice, you know what I mean? And again, I didn't hate it, but I also didn't, I was never like, oh, I want to play in the BP1. This is my favorite hoop shoe, you know what I mean? So Yeah, if you're a guard, I feel like you can definitely make it work, especially if you're trying to save money for $90. This is a really, I would say this is one of the best hoop shoes for $90. You know what I mean? Like the GT Cut Academy, however, is like 90 bucks and on sale for like 60, 70 bucks. So definitely probably get the GT Cut Academy. But if you really like Brandin Podziemski for some reason, or you really want to get this shoe, you can make it work. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's more suited for like bigger dudes who want a little bit more support. Surprisingly, I don't know why, but yeah, it just has a little bit more of that supportive, more rigid feel with more like a higher up off the ground and well cushioned feel. You know what I mean? Versus like a really light, minimal guard shoe. You know, so I wouldn't really recommend it towards guards, but you can make it work, like I said. But I would recommend it more towards bigger dudes, of course, right? So anyways, that about concludes my performance review of the Rigorer BP1. Again, if you guys want to copy, try to leave in the free link in the description box, but that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.